Javed Abdi Foundation, JAF, which also stands for Journalism, Advocacy and Fun. Please subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon, like, comment, and share.
I think India, as far as data and disability is concerned, is stuck at this 2% figure. It doesn't matter which year, from 2001 to 2011 to the NSSO thereafter, we're not able to get over this little hump of 2%, various 2.1, 2.6, whatever. And this is despite two interesting things. One is the Kerala state government had its own disability survey, in which they actually covered more disabilities than are listed actually in the RPWD. It was very exhaustive, the kind of questions they asked, and the categories, the subcategories of disabilities. And despite that, they again still landed up with around 2.2%. Similarly, the latest NSSO sample survey had this, neither here nor there kind of attempt to bridge, a very impairment model of disability, and, do you have X, Y, Z kind of thing. And what most of the world is kind of shifting towards, which is what everybody keeps talking about, the Washington Group model of disability statistics, in which it's not so much about impairments in the post-ICF world, but it's more about limitations in, again, not just activity, not just activities of daily living, etc., but also restrictions in participation. And that one would definitely say is more progressive. And there again, it does not fall into this trap of these little pigeonholes, in which you are forced to say, are you dash, are you blind, are you deaf, are you, because there it is also a question of identity. And I think that is, the whole stigma around one, identifying as a person with disability, and two, the reluctance of the person who is asking the question, the enumerator. Quite often, in fact, last time around, there were so many reports of people who were sitting in their drawing room and, speaking to the person, and sure enough, the question was not asked, because it was like, I don't know what the enumerators are really thinking, but there was a really high, kind of a percentage of people who said that they were waiting for the question to be asked. In fact, that was such a huge achievement, in the last census, because the disability question itself was, kind of propelled to the first 10 questions, and that was Javed's achievement. Really, he managed to get it from wherever it was to the first 10 questions, and, so that even the enumerator would not kind of lose interest along the way, or just kind of skip the question. But even there, there were so many people who just did not get asked the question. So you had the somewhat embarrassing situation of, aren't you supposed to ask me about the disability question? And if you did not have a very visible disability, you would most likely not get asked the question. And then in my case, for example, I was waiting to, kind of self-identify as a person with psychosocial disability. And because it's not visible, the person felt completely embarrassed to ask the thing. And when I flagged the issue with him, he said, no, ma'am, how will you be a disabled person? I did not want to, kind of insult you, kind of thing. And that sort of issue. So even if you do look at the comparison of the NSSO data and the census data of 2001 and 2, you will find with the census data a very high representation of people who are locomotor disabled and of people who are vision disabled. And the reason for that is because these are probably the more visible disabilities, and the rest of them you just kind of take a call and don't ask the question, or you just decide whether the person is disabled or not disabled in the first place. So to answer your question, what about the invisible disabilities? Sadly, despite the fact that we really, went all out in the last census in 2011, somehow we've not really made too much of headway as far as advocacy goes in influencing, the creation of the questions for the next year's census. And that's such a shame because, again, it's going to be this mishmash of not quite Washington group kind of question, which just boils down to, do you have difficulty in standing? Do you have difficulty in, conducting these various activities of daily living, which kind of conveniently avoids asking a person outright, are you disabled? Because a lot of people are disabled without identifying as disabled. Most senior citizens are. And it also allows for people who don't identify as disabled to, just answer, and that's enough for us to realize that, okay, this person has difficulty in mobility, whether, one realizes it or not. You may need a support person. So we also, let's say if I have cerebral palsy, I may need a support person. We both need support people. I may call myself disabled. You may call yourself just a senior citizen who requires support. But at the end of the day, we have our information. And that is so important, because at the end of the day, what is the point of data? Is the point of data about identity, or is it about information? And in this temptation, and I would say a kind of greed really, to ensure that, quote unquote, our disability makes an appearance and makes its presence felt kind of thing. As a result of that, quite often we're losing out on information. Let me give you a small example. As far as the blind people concerned, now you will find that earlier on you would have, you would count people, for example, who did not have an eye. One eye. Okay, so if one eye was not working, or if one ear was not working, you were counted as disabled earlier. But thereafter, because there is such paucity of data, and this data itself is kind of used on a very macro level to influence policy, the community said that, oh my God, if you're going to include all these people, it's going to affect our chances at reservation. So if you're going to use this kind of data, then, you please have a separate category. And that's how, really speaking, you have these, in what should be a kind of spectrum of measuring disability, you have things like low vision and completely blind. You have hard of hearing and deaf. And that really is more about identity, because in the process, because we're no longer capturing, for example, a person who just does not have one eye, now that could have different implications. I'm sure that there will be some kind of bureaucrat who comes up with a rule that, okay, if you have only one eye, you can't get a driving license. Now we're no longer capturing that information, even if it's such a medical model kind of way of looking at disability, because it would kind of intrude on jobs and reservations. So therefore, disabled people themselves are trying to set the agenda as far as census is concerned, instead of just looking at collecting information and then probably escalating, the collection of information and using that to further investigate more about disability, and more importantly, and most importantly of all, actually using data. And that sadly is not happening. Speaking about this 2% barrier that we have to somehow break, because you're talking about the planning commission said that, okay, there must be 5 to 6% people who are disabled in India. Globally, the statistics are averaging around 15%. But we're never ever reaching there. And that's one point that I wanted to make. Maybe a survey which came the closest was one in Telangana, which used a combination of two factors. One was the Washington group kind of questions, which are very simple questions, understandable by anybody, asked for everybody. It doesn't kind of flag any issues of, okay, this is about disability or anything like that. It's just like, do you have difficulty doing X, Y, Z? And it does not have a binary reply. It allows for a spectrum of responses by saying, yes, I have some difficulty, to no, I have absolutely no difficulty. So it allows for that kind of a lot of shades of gray, so to speak. They supplemented that in Telangana along with a very purely medical kind of evaluation. Now, this was done on trial basis in one district, and there they managed to come up with a percentage of 12 point something. So really speaking, maybe that's what we need. We need a combination of both. But because in every other way, even though people are trying out the Washington group thing, maybe not completely, there are issues with that. For example, the Washington group, the first set, which has a fixed number of questions, it does not include people with mental illness. You need to go into the Washington group extended questionnaire. There are limitations with even that, but the advantage with it is that it's been tested. It's used globally. Data comparability is a huge thing. So it makes sense that we move, because yes, from this very medical kind of, are you this, are you that, pigeonholes, to do you have difficulty with this, do you have difficulty with that, and how involved are you in this aspect of society, etc. It's good that we're moving and incorporating all of that, but how it's working, that's a bit of a toughie, because neither the NSSO nor the Kerala thing has been helpful in that respect. We've still landed up with the same figures.
JAF is a youth led initiative. We deeply appreciate the support of all our interns and volunteers. Thank you. You can follow us on Facebook at Javed Abdi Foundation, and you can tweet us at Rishad Shimmer.